And that's what I'm planning to teach you today. Summarizing a book tends to drive honors students nuts because of the word requirement. Ron, what's the word requirement on this assignment? I'm asking you because it's like right there on your desk in front of you. That's why I picked on you, Ron. It's right there.
No more than 300 words.
No more than 300 words. Minimum 200, no more than 300. This word requirement has driven honors students nuts because they have difficulty condensing their ideas. You've read a 200, 300, 400-page book, and now you want to summarize it by including every major detail. Think about how you could summarize what will be our example for today, To Kill a Mockingbird. Wow, as you cast your mind back over that story, you probably remember a number of details that seem pretty interesting. Not only is there the plot of Tom Robinson, but there's also the plot of Boo Radley. You also have some issues concerning Dill. You can also consider some of the bit characters like the Cunninghams or Mrs. Dubose, and you must think, what do I include? Well, the sort of default approach is to include everything you can. But the 300-word limit prevents you from doing that. So today let's focus on what exactly is important enough to enter into a summary of your book. And it starts by understanding that every book includes some central parts that are indispensable, that make the book what it is. So we've got to focus on the foundation. Focus on the core, indispensable portions of your book, and we'll build up detail from there. We'll start by talking about narrative books. I want to make this distinction exceptionally clear between narrative and non-narrative books, because some of you are used to talking about fiction and nonfiction. I don't like the idea of fiction and nonfiction. That doesn't help us understand the difference. John is dealing what we would call a non-narrative book. Freakonomics. It's an analysis of certain economic trends in United States and international culture. It's kind of like a textbook. It's a non-narrative. That means while it may contain stories, it's not one coherent story from beginning to end. Same is true for Friday Night Lights. While it may contain stories, it is not Bissinger's intent to write a story from beginning to end. Narratives are books which convey one single overriding story. It might have some little subordinate plot lines, but there's a primary story. I don't like the fiction versus nonfiction idea because some nonfiction books are inherently just narratives. Anybody dealing here with a memoir or something that's nonfiction and just reads like a storybook? Kristen, what are you reading? Without You by Anthony Rapp. Okay, so this is a memoir of Anthony Rapp's time during Rent, right? In other words, it's going to read like a story. It has a coherent setting, coherent characters, facing challenges, a very clear development. In second period, we were talking about A Child Called It, The Glass Castle. These are all nonfiction, but they're narrative. They're stories. So you should look at that always. Flags of Our Fathers is pretty much non-narrative because he will talk about those 6 men and kind of tell their story, but he also gives a lot of discussion about military operations, and it's not primarily about them. It's just about everything going on in the war surrounding them. So there are strong story elements to yours, Michael, and we might even call it a hybrid of the two, but I would consider that to be non-narrative more than narrative. Okay? So let's talk about narrative first. Storybooks contain 3 essential parts. Every single story in the world contains 3 parts. What are they? Yes? Character. What else? Yes? Yes, and plot is always driven very strongly by which aspect? What drives the plot? What's the energy of the plot? No. No. Conflict. Yes. Conflict. So we have our characters, our plot, which is driven by conflict, and what else do we need for a story to happen? Setting. So to condense it, you need people in a place having a problem. My favorite discussion of story writing comes, of course, from the towering geniuses of American literature and entertainment, Trey Parker and Matt Stone of South Park, who, when asked, is it difficult to write a movie? when they were writing their South Park movie, they said, no, it's not really tough. You just get some people and basically some stuff happens to them. And that's writing a movie. And of course they're pretty flippant about it, but really when you get down to it, all you have with a story is people in a place and they're having a problem. Their attempts to overcome that problem are the story. That's it. So you need your core characters, your core conflict, and your main setting. And that is the foundation of your narrative book. In non-narrative books, as we've already discussed, and I think that, like I said, Michael's a little bit of hybrid, Flags of Our Fathers. John's Freakonomics is a very obvious non-narrative, non-fiction book. Anybody else? I don't think so. Dealing with strong non-narrative books in the class? No. So we'll use John's as a primary example, and Michael, you can see how this affects yours. In non-narrative books, you have a subject. What is the author writing about? An intended audience. And you should usually include something about the attitude or the personal approach of the author. This attitude, you can also include the idea of purpose. Why are they writing this? So in Freakonomics, the subject is obscure economic relations. The audience, John, for whom do you think this was written? Anyone that's interested, a general audience. You don't need a degree in economics to read that book. That's popular nonfiction. Same thing with Flags of Our Fathers. You don't have to be a military man or woman to understand Flags of Our Fathers. So, his subject is obscure issues of economics. His audience is the general audience, and their attitude or tone or their purpose is to enlighten and probably to dispel some illusions. Like I think, if I remember correctly, John, one of the illusions that's dispelled is that you actually make money by being a drug dealer. Yeah, and they find out that no, actually it's not very lucrative to be a drug dealer. You could do a much better job with other relatively simple employment. So, their subject, obscure economic relationships for a general audience trying to dispel illusions. That's what they're doing with Freakonomics. You should be able to take those three portions and write them in one single sentence. And this is where we start our summary. A single sentence that conveys the entirety of the book. Every detail? Absolutely not. It's impossible. And it was interesting. I think a really good example came from second period today when Ryan Krantz was trying to write a single sentence summary of Jurassic Park. And he wanted to include a lot of details in there. The sentence was extraordinarily long. It doesn't need to be long. Like this. This is To Kill a Mockingbird. The Finch family experiences different problems with intolerance in the Depression-era town of Maycomb, Alabama. If I were writing a one-sentence summary for maybe a listing of the book in a catalog, or a listing of the film in a television guide, that might be it right there. I have my characters, I have my conflict, and I have my setting. My people, my problem, and my place. And now I have my focus for writing my summary. By the way, I want to make this very clear. This sentence, as it stands, does not actually appear in my summary. I'll show you my summary later. But this is the idea that helped me write the summary. You must clarify what you're talking about as far as your three parts first.